Hi guys, welcome to another episode of All Things Compounding. Today we are hosting Mr. Pranav Agarwal. इनके पास 15 plus years का work ex है and he is an IIM Indore graduate. But more importantly, he is a Bitcoin OG. He has been in Bitcoin space way before it was cool to invest in Bitcoin or crypto. He has been tracking it for even longer than any of us can imagine. And he has a truly remarkable story. जहाँ सबसे पहले ये माइनिंग के अंदर वेंचर किया, देन ही स्टार्टेड ट्रेडिंग इट, इवेंचुअली रियलाइजिंग व्हाट बिटकॉइन इज एज एन एसेट क्लास एंड ही हैज बीन हॉडलिंग एवर सिंस. आज की कॉन्वर्जेशन में हमने सबसे पहले तो उनकी जर्नी के बारे में बात की, बट आफ्टर दैट वी एड्रेस्ड सम रियली जेन्युइन FAQs दैट वर आस्क्ड इन माय यूट्यूब कमेंट सेक्शन. वी टॉक्ड अबाउट व्हाट इफ गवर्नमेंट बैन्स बिटकॉइन, व्हाई डज बिटकॉइन रिक्वायर सो मच ऑफ एनर्जी टू माइन, व्हाई इज इट too volatile as an asset class, can it replace US dollar. इसके साथ ही साथ हमने ये भी डिस्कस किया whether or not is it an inflation hedge. हम फिर anti-thesis पे भी जाते हैं, what could be possible risks associated with investing in Bitcoin, and in the end हमने Bitcoin के अलावा बाकी ज़्यादा जो crypto assets and crypto projects हैं उनके बारे में डिटेल में समझा and how do they differ from Bitcoin. So if you're interested in knowing all of this, stay tuned because we are starting right now. Hi guys, welcome to another episode, and today we have Mr. Pranav. Thank you so much, Pranav, for being here.
My pleasure, Kashish.
So I've already introduced you to my audience, and we'll just start off, right, talking about your own journey about Bitcoin. So I just wanted to understand, when was the first time you got introduced to the concept of Bitcoin as a thing? What was the price then? Then second question is कि when did you actually became serious about it and buying it? तब क्या प्राइस था? And when was the last time you bought Bitcoin? And तब क्या प्राइस था? And how has your journey been over time? So I just want to understand that.
Sure. So this is a very interesting answer actually. So back in 2010, I came across this concept called Bitcoin. And Rohit, who you also know, was one of the only. So I went to IIM Indore, so I knew a lot of IITians, right? So I bounced it off the engineers in my circle who I was close to. So one of my friends, who's an excellent startup founder today in Bangalore, another one, Rohit. So we had this group of 5-6 of us who went on calls and emails to figure out how we can mine this thing called Bitcoin. The problem was in 2010 in India, sitting in Bombay, Bangalore, Delhi, wherever we were, we had no way to sort of understand, or we did not have enough resources to get information on how to mine Bitcoin. At that time, if I'm not wrong, the price was like $10. It had gone from like $10 to some $30 or something. And we were like, boss, iska to koi intrinsic value hi nahi hai, you know, and sab log MBA the, everybody thought we knew what business valuation is. And we couldn't, because we were so far away from what tech was, right? From the sort of breakthrough tech of the next decade, we didn't have a sense of this is where this goes, right? This is how it gets deployed. This is how it gets used, or anything of that sort. We didn't understand blockchain. We didn't understand ASICs. You didn't need an ASIC then. You just needed you could have mined. I could, if you knew it, I could have plugged in on just bought a good, say 1 lakh rupee computer at that time, or 1.5 lakh rupee computer, and started to mine Bitcoin. And we sort of figured कि boss, ये $20-30 से $70-80-100 हो जाएगा, फिर क्या? So we were comparing them to football cards, which some of us had, and we thought of them as a collectible. that ये एक digital collectible है, तो इसकी value मतलब 20 Pokemon card जैसे है, $20-30 से $100 हो जाएगी, और क्या होगा? And we dropped it. Then what happened is 2013, it again came to our radar when one of my juniors pinged me, hey Pranav, do you know about Bitcoin? I said, hey boss, we tried looking for information. We didn't get it. Agar terko kuch milta hai to tu bata. So he again looked at it. I got everybody back on a mail chain. And then we basically again tried to find something about it. At that time, I think the prices were in the 3 digits. So it was probably after the second halving or something. The first 4-year cycle was over. So that second kick had come in. Then what stopped us was Gumroad.
Okay.
So everybody was like, boss, ye fraudulent hai. Drug mafia is using this. Smuggling mafia is using this. Our parents will throw us out of the house if we do anything of the sort. And definitely the police will come knocking on our door one fine day.
So that's when you weren't in US. तब आप इंडिया में थे.
No, I wasn't in US, and we were all younger, right? We were in our mid-20s at that time. So your risk appetite, and we were all having great corporate jobs, post IIM sort of careers. So we didn't really need we didn't need the hustle, right? Ki boss ye, and तभी startups का इतना concept नहीं था ना. So you worked in a fortune company, you worked in one of India's best companies, and you were very happy with what you were doing. So this was like a side thing कि कुछ कर सकते हैं तो करते हैं, more out of inquisitiveness, but nobody could actually guide us on what to do. Then of course I traveled a lot for my work. So then 16 17 when Bitcoin started pumping, and by then exchanges had come to India. So Zeppe had come to India. So that sort of was my first actual entry into Bitcoin. So
as an
having known
investment.
about it since 2010, exactly, by which time it had reached that $10,000-12,000 mark. And then we did it more out of like you would if you were a young investor, or if you were a young trader, you did it more out of let's try it, right? So एक 25,000 रुपया डालते हैं, 15,000 रुपया डालते हैं, and let's try what happens. And then it went up 50%. So we were like, boss, this is it, right? So then we started, and Twitter was exploding at that time. These were all well set up, right? Like by 2016, Twitter, etc., was well known. Quora bhi nahi, Reddit was well known. So you sort of went on those threads, and you had my brother who was in New Jersey, my friend who was in Boston, and we would sort of exchange notes. Keep boss, ye naya coin hai, ye is exchange pe available. And that time there was no KYC, so you could actually go to any exchange online, open an account like you would open an email address or a social media account, and basically trade crypto. The logic was that you have some coin to bring in. So you brought in Bitcoin, and then you changed everything denominated into Bitcoin. So that is when all these Bitcoin Cash came up. So the logic was that again, I did not take the effort to learn Bitcoin, right? I was still looking at it as an investment, like I would in a stock market where I'm saying everybody else knows more about it, so I'm going to listen to what they're saying. And at that time also, we went up to like 17,000-18,000, if I'm not wrong. That was the peak of that cycle. And it was sort of Thanksgiving to Christmas 2017. And literally it was Thanksgiving topic of the table. Everybody was talking Bitcoin at that time, because that time crypto was still not a very big word. Bitcoin was it was the Bisleri to your bottled water, everybody says Bitcoin. But Bitcoin, then I would tell people, boss, Bitcoin is not just that. Look at this Litecoin, it is 100x faster. Look at Bitcoin Cash. And then we learned concepts like hard fork, because Bitcoin Cash was a hard fork from Bitcoin. So whoever held Bitcoin at that time got acquired in Bitcoin Cash when it hard forked. So ये सब सीखा, but never bothered to sort of get into it. Then what happened is the crash came, Q1 2018, I think. So this went down to 7,000-8,000. So typical investor behavior, right? When you're invested at 18,000, you want to keep buying when it drops, because you want to average down. But what happened is, which today, if you think about it, was bad, but then we got saved, right? Because Indian government banned it. So all of our Indian exchanges stopped accepting Indian deposits into their exchanges, like Zeppe, etc. You couldn't send money to Zeppe. So how to buy Bitcoin? And we didn't have. So unless and until you knew somebody internationally who could buy for you on a foreign exchange like Binance or something, you basically had no way to buy. And then it kept dropping to $3,000 or 3,500, I think was the bottom of 4,000. Because at that time, I remember in rupees, it went from like 7-8 lakhs to around 3.5 lakhs or something. 3 lakhs, या कुछ गया था, because India has a premium also. So it went to around 280 or 3 lakhs was probably the maximum it went, the lowest it went to. And we were like, बच गए बॉस, अगर और पैसा डाल दिया होता तो ये स्लाइड होते होते 10 लाख से अभी इधर it went from 10-12 lakhs to basically 2.5-3 lakhs. So that's how our journey was. And then I sort of, at that time, I realized that this is not it. But in that year, no, sort of 2018, I got some free time. I was traveling again to the US, etc. So I got exposed to Bitcoin, the concept. I read up on it. So I read some websites. I followed some guys on Twitter. And then I got into those basic learning websites. If you follow any of the Twitter Bitcoin leads like Pomp or any of these guys, you will realize that a lot of them have their own websites where they'll tell you what happened in 1971 when gold and reserve currency, fiat reserve currency, sort of fiat currency broke their relationship. So that's where I started getting into the economics of it. And then last 2 years, I've gotten into the technology of it. That what is Bitcoin as a technology in terms of ye blockchain hai kya cheez? Because whenever I would explain Bitcoin to someone, no, I would face a wall at blockchain. Boss, ye blockchain kya hai? And then at that time, my simple explanation was server. It's a server. Aap samjho ye server hai, but it's not a server, right? So it doesn't help. So the question takes you to a totally different tangent. That answer takes you to a totally different tangent. So that's where I learned about Bitcoin and the blockchain and how it is applied, because I was looking at other projects. There the blockchain became important. How is it coded? The Bitcoin blockchain is immutable. What's a 51% consensus required if you want to change something? The 21 million hard cap, the fact that there is so small things like 100 million satoshis form of Bitcoin is known from 10 years. I know that for the last 10 years now. But what I didn't know was that how it is mined. Every block is mined every 10 minutes. You get a halving in 4 years because 210,000 blocks, but the difficulty adjusts. So there is something called as hash rate. So hash rate will kick. So the algo auto adjusts the hash rate, the difficulty to keep one block at around 10 minutes. So all those concepts is what I learned in the last 2 years. And that's where I realized, with my background from business and understanding macro economics, finance, of course, corporate treasury, then I realized that, boss, this is it, right? This is the long-term solution for at least store of value. And just to give you, at this time, the prices were, so I had some Bitcoin back from 2017. So that helped me. And then obviously I had a lot more investing capital now than I had then. So different stages of life, right? So then I doubled down, sort of, I kept adding. So I have kept adding at every price from, you can say, 10,000 to 60,000, 65,000. So I keep adding. I've never sold my Bitcoin. I have a hardware wallet. I use a Trezor if somebody wants to know. Then I sort of keep it there. I do dabble in other coins once in a while, but that is more for trading and it's more short term. So typically 1 week, 2 weeks, a month, just for sort of figuring out.
Okay. So that's
sort of my journey.
That's a very beautiful journey. And I didn't know you were aware of this concept back in 2010. But Kismat ka khel 2010 में जानते हुए भी, the only time you got serious was when the third halving cycle happened and when it crashed to 3,000. But you're fortunate enough to have gotten in this early. Even I am fortunate to have gotten in this early, where Bitcoin as a whole asset is still under $1 trillion market cap. And the total addressable market is way more. So one last thing before we move on to the next section, right? When was the last time you bought Bitcoin? And what price?
I bought it even this week. So the last week I had, so I generally put, so now what I do is because I'm based in the US, I trade on Coinbase. So I generally put in orders and keep them. So like my orders were there till 33,000. And so therefore that order hit sometime this week, I think last week it hit. But that's how sort of I plan it. So now I don't have any orders, but I have a $30,000 order. I had a $30,000 order when it was 33, but now because it's moved back up, I might I don't have any open orders right now, but I'll figure out. I still think we'll see 30,000 once more. So I don't want to buy around 35.
Okay.
So I'm waiting to buy around 30.
And what's the percentage of Bitcoin of your total portfolio? How much allocation have you given to just Bitcoin as everything, equity, debt? So I'm just talking about your whole net worth. How much of your net worth is in Bitcoin?
Yeah. Bitcoin is easily more than a third of my total net worth, which is actually, it used to be more because it used to be 50% sort of. You can understand, right? Because it was $70,000. So at $35,000, probably it's around 30%. So yeah.
So yeah, if my audience thinks this is way too crazy, this maybe is. I wouldn't recommend any of you to do this until and unless you understand the technology. And I personally also know a lot of guys who are all in. 100% of their net worth is in Bitcoin. That's because they truly believe. So before you do anything, just learn. And that is what this conversation is all about. So sir, moving on, now let's talk about what's your investment thesis of Bitcoin. Okay? So I have uploaded my thesis on YouTube. And what I've realized is that different people have a very different thesis to it. So a Michael Saylor will have a different thesis from Pomp, and all of them are directionally correct as to what they look at it. But then again, they do differ a bit on whether it's a reserve asset, whether it's a currency, whether it replaces US dollar, whether it's next gold. So there are a lot of narratives around it. I just wanted to understand what is your narrative about it, and also how do you track your investment thesis. So before that, let's just talk about your investment thesis, Pele.
Cool. So the last couple of years, so you're absolutely right? Everybody's it's like a pinball machine, right? If you've been in this space for a few years, you've had yourself get kicked around to various thought processes. You've read Saifuddin, you've read everybody fiat standard, Bitcoin standard, you've read digital gold, you've sort of figured out. So my investment thesis is basically that we are living a digital life today, where each of us, if you look, the iPhone has a feature, it tells you how many hours a day you spent on your phone every week. Every Sunday it gives you like a pop-up to tell you how many hours of phone and whether it's up or low, higher or lower than last week. And it gives you a very macro level breakup of what you did, right? So if you track anybody's social media instant messaging hours from the last 5 years, you'll see the graph is like this. It's almost exponential now because people are spending that much time. We've stopped playing games, etc. But a lot of people will do only social media on their phone, right? A lot of people don't have work emails, don't have other things. They'll either do social media, or they'll do stuff like Netflix, etc., YouTube, etc. So there, my thesis for Bitcoin is that we are going into a digital world. Everybody now values their digital presence as much as we value our real life presence. So for me, I am a Clash of Clans gamer since about 6 years now, and 6+ years now, and I have two IDs, both are max town hall 14s. Now what happens is, if you ask me, Pranav, have you spent money on Clash of Clans? I have to admit, I have spent money on Clash of Clans. But what happens is, the reason was because there were certain skins which I really wanted. If you asked me 5 years back, Pranav, will you spend money on Clash of Clans? I said, pagal hai kya? Are you stupid? It's a game. I'm just not playing it, right? But I've actually spent money to gift my clanmates gifts on Christmas, so diamonds on Christmas. So that's gems on Christmas. So that's how it is, right? You realize that community, and it's all IIM Indore alumni community. It's a clan of our, not my batch, but several of my seniors and juniors as well. But it's all IMI guys. So the logic was that basically digital life is going to increase. So you have to have a digital medium of value transfer to support that digital lifestyle, right? let us say in the real world, I have dollars, I have rupees, I have etc. currency, fiat currency. It still needs to be digitized, right? I need to have a way to, I need an app store, or I need something which says, okay, I'm going to charge your credit card $10 and I'm going to give you this in return. Now, when you bring in Bitcoin, it gives me a anti-inflationary concept to that fiat. So what happens is, think about it as you're getting in on the ground floor of the value cycle for a product or an asset that is going to be the medium of exchange for a digital world. Forget about what we do in the fiat world, and I'll come to that later. But in a digital world purely, you're going to need something that is micro divisible by 10 decimal spots, or basically I can do 100 Satoshi transaction and still buy something, right? I can't do that with fiat because my credit card company will say, boss, I won't let you buy something for $1. My transaction fee is $2. So my minimum becomes that, right? So there is going to be a level which says that micro transactions have to be and see, when you think in dollars, it's small numbers, right? Let's say in rupees, apne ko rupees samajhta hai easily. So 50 rupees is valuable, right? It's not a small number. If I tell you, boss, 50 rupees मेरे को spend करना है on an online game, whether it is to play Rummy or it is to play Fantasy 11 Fantasy League with my friends for IPL, whether it is to buy the latest skin on Clash of Clans, I should have a way of storing that medium online and then passing it on to the vendor or to each other as seamless and as costless as possible. And that is only possible through a digital system, something like blockchain, that does not involve the big banks. Because though IMPS started free, the government had to ultimately clamp down and say, boss, no charges on IMPS because that is meant to be free, or UPI, I don't know. So that was the logic, right? The government had to say UPI pay, you cannot charge a transaction fee. When our banks had started doing that.
Yeah.
So that we have to come out of that power economics. Second, so that is one application thesis, right? Because that's very important. Where do you apply this particular concept of Bitcoin? Second thesis, second half of this thesis is the power of the people thesis, or what you want to call as democratizing power thesis, which is compared to our parents who were born pre-1970 or pre-1975, sort of, in that generation, which we call the boomers generation. In the baby boomers generation, the logic was, I am going to study one of these 12 courses. If I study any of them, there is a particular career track and I will get into that. If I don't study any of these 12 courses, then I have to sort of what we call today hustle. I have to struggle. It used to be called at that time. I have to struggle through the rest of my life, and I will have to either do my own job or do some job or get some favor and get into a company, or you have a business. And families like ours, nobody studied because nobody had to study, right? You knew ki after 15, 16 years of age, you're going to go to office and you're going to be told to start doing trading. So you're going to have to do that. And for that, you didn't need a degree. Dad is not going to ask me where my degree is. So those were sort of your career options. And therefore it made sense. And of course, that was a gold reserve era. So you had fiat currency it was not in the hands of a president to decide that I'll print $2 trillion of notes because there is a pandemic upon us, So that is what that generation was. Our generation realized that, boss, I could be good at photography. I could be good at digital design, at designing. I could be good at taking a design and making it into a digital version of it. I could be good at social media management. I could be good at making jokes on a stage. So you realize that, boss, these are viable career options, which when I went to college were not a viable career option 20 years back. So today, you agree that education is not linked to success. So you've sort of broken that chain. Now what happens is, third level, with work from home and the entire COVID thing, you've realized that I don't even need to work 8 hours in an office. You've taken it one step further, right? You've gone from boss, ये 12 घंटा ये काम करना है as a CA, doctor, engineer, whatever, architect, to I can be a comedian, but I still have to show up to different shows, or I can be a DJ, or I can be a whatever, to now being ki boss, I can be connected on a headphone talking to Pranav who's 8,000 miles away, and we could both make money off this video on YouTube, right? In theory.
Yeah.
I don't know, are we going to, but in theory we could. So that was the logic, right? That progression means I create something, I want to own that IP, and I want to earn from that IP if it's a good creation.
Yep.
So that ecosystem cannot fit into the fiat world.
Why?
Because the fiat world is not designed for that. The fiat world money is controlled by people who don't see that, right? They'll say, boss, you put it on YouTube, so YouTube is going to take 90% of what you make from this. I'm going to give you 10%. Whereas I want to say, fine, you created the forum where people are able to see this. So all I had to do was upload a video. I'll give you 10% as a channel fee, but I still keep 90% of what you make from this video.
Okay. So democratizing everything.
Correct. So people are coming here to watch me, right? People are not here and waiting कि कोई तो आएगा कुछ तो चलेगा और मैं देखूंगा. It's like if you, I don't know if you are old enough or not, but if you ever went on a, say, a Bombay Goa intercity bus journey in India in the 90s, you went on a bus, it was suppose a 6-8 hour 10-hour journey, they would show you 4 movies back to back, and that's it, right? You didn't have a choice. बहुत हुआ अगर कोई 10-20 लोग मिल गए और उन्होंने हल्ला मचा दिया तो वो बोलता था अरे ये वाला वीडियो है, आपको चाहिए क्या? तो वो आपको 4 की जगह पे 6 ऑप्शन दे देगा कि भाई मेरे पास 6 कैसेट है, आपको जो चूज करना है आप लोग चूज करो आपस में. you are going to have to watch 3 out of the 6. There is no other choice. Today I care two hoots about that guy, right? Because I have my phone, I have downloaded my content, or I have a 5G 4G connection, and I am all set. I have on-demand content. There was no concept of on-demand content 20 years back.
Yep.
So YouTube thinks they've created that, but the content creators have given that. So they've created the format and the platform. But the content is not owned by them, right?
Yep.
So that is a very big thing.
Okay.
And therefore comes regulation also. And there that leads into who regulates also. So therefore, when you mix all of this, you realize that you need something like a Bitcoin, which says, I value Kashish and I value the conversation that I am having with Kashish, and I value the work that he is doing. I want to tip him $100 worth of Bitcoin today, but I don't want YouTube to take 80% of it. So I can go to your channel, or I can go to your whatever link, and I can tip you on Strike, or I can tip you on something, and I can say this is X Bitcoin, which is worth $100 today, and you will get $99.95 of it.
Got it.
That doesn't happen in a fiat world.
Okay. So what I can make out of it is key two sides of your investment thesis is, first is more of a secular trend of things becoming digital, and in a digital world we'll need a digital money, and Bitcoin is the best contender over there. And your second thesis is part of the grander scheme of things, wherein everything is becoming way more democratized and way more decentralized, and to live in that decentralized world, we also need a monetary system which is decentralized than a fiat world, than a fiat standard, which lies in the hand of nexus of few businessmen, politicians, and central bankers who control the money. And I think that does make a lot of sense. So now we'll move on to the next section, wherein I've compiled a couple of FAQs and a couple of, I'd say, myths or just general questions that people have had on my channel regarding Bitcoin. So when I was also learning about Bitcoin, even I, started questioning a lot of things, and these were a common string of questions that even popped in my mind. And it's very natural for somebody who's learning Bitcoin कि उनके दिमाग में भी आएगा. So what I want you to do, sir, is I'll just post those questions, I'll just put them forth, and I just want you to answer them to the best of your ability, trying to convince them and try to understand the way you explained it to me when I was learning, and or the way she can explained it to me when I was learning. So the very first thing being, what if government bans Bitcoin? So what if government bans Bitcoin? What happens?
So the government can definitely ban Bitcoin by regulation, right? But it cannot ban Bitcoin by circulation. So what happens is you have the authority as a government to say that what works or what doesn't work, right? The best example I can give is marijuana. In the US, marijuana was illegal and a banned substance for years and decades. But today it is being allowed at a state by state level. And I think around 20 out of the 50 states have marijuana legal, or maybe the number is higher. But it's still viewed as something that's bad, right? It's not viewed as something that's cool by people who don't consume it. I don't consume it, so I don't view it as cool. But think about this, right? About 100 years back, there was liquor prohibition. Liquor was also banned. But how do we think about liquor today? We don't think it's like marijuana, right? Jabki liquor or marijuana is a physical substance that needs to be carried physically in a physical space and is detectable by taste, smell, etc. test. So things like dogs can detect it, or anti-smuggling devices can detect it. It has the risk of breakage, pillage, etc. Imagine all of that is not there with Bitcoin. It's 100% digital. It is 100%, you can self-custody it into a equivalent of a pen drive or an app in your phone. It can be 100% offline unless and until you need to transact it. And unless and until the internet goes down, your Bitcoin nobody can touch. It's the value of whatever is the market value on that day is available to you as long as you have access to the internet. So the only problem with regulation will be that you will not have a on-ramp, off-ramp, which is what we call as on-ramp, off-ramp, which is what everybody knows as exchanges, because you need to at some point bring it back to a fiat or bring fiat into a Bitcoin transaction, which is what your exchanges help you do, right? But there are P2P on-ramp, off-ramps also, what is called as decentralized exchanges. So if you remember, again, you all may be too young for it, Napster used to be a P2P. You had to download MP3s 20 years back. So you either went on sites and you kept searching, or at some point somebody created Napster and said, boss, wait, if Kashish has this song and he's willing to send it to Pranav, then I'm just going to create a platform that allows that exchange, and which is exactly what a decentralized exchange is for Bitcoin or crypto. If you want the money and I want the coin, we can do the swap. And we don't need to have an exchange like ZepPay or CoinDCX or Binance or Coinbase control that for us. And that's again coming from my democratizing theme part of the thesis, right? And which is why also I feel that Bitcoin does not take over the fiat world. I don't see us moving out of a fiat currency at all, for multiple reasons. Like all 200 countries of the world can't work on one value chain or one value denominator. B, every government has to be a welfare state also. You can't be anti-welfare, right? Just imagine in our society, we have so many people who can't afford the basics of life, or what we call as social security in the US. If there is everything Bitcoin denominated, the governments will not be able to do welfare schemes.
Exactly.
So we need to have welfare, and we need to have fiat for addressing that welfare need. Otherwise, we will fall into a crack which we cannot climb ourselves out of. So there is a huge use case for fiat also.
Okay, got it. So, like the whole notion of government banning Bitcoin, what I can make out is the way it happened with liquor or marijuana or other recreational drugs, it never actually got banned per se. It use still existed because people found its utility. Also, these were easier to let's say ban compared to a thing like Bitcoin, which is totally digital. Nobody can even touch it. Like it's literally technically impossible for you to ban it. The only thing is regulation, but then uska bhi way around is P2P exchanges. So second,
P2P exchange, and also I'm saying it's a point of time view, right? A government which bans it today will have to regulate it and allow it at some point of time. Whether it's 2 years later or 20 years later is that government's choice. We can't speak to it, but they have to unban it.
Got it. So second point was it's too volatile to be used as a currency or an asset. So
absolutely. So I've told this to several people, right? That Bitcoin today is worth at today's price, say 0.7, 0.8 trillion, maybe in that range. Just to give you context, gold is about 10, 11, 12 trillion dollars. That's the range for gold market cap. And I think US equity is around 30 trillion or something, or maybe even 50, 60 trillion. I don't know. And bond market is 2x of US equity trillion, US equity market cap. So there is a lot of space, right? When compare Bitcoin like you would to a micro cap in a stock market, how volatile, right? 5 days upper circuit marega, फिर 3 days lower circuit मार देगा, फिर 5 days range bound चलेगा, फिर suddenly next month वापस 5 days upper circuit मारेगा. That is called volatility. If you remove upper circuits in the US, there is no concept of circuits. So those micro caps go up 20, 30, 40% on a weekly basis. And therefore, because the size of that asset or security, or you can say currency, is very small, it is subject to people dinging it, right? Because somebody who wants to, so imagine Reddit, right? When they did GameStop, it was a band of million people who said that, boss, I am not going to cut my position, you can do what you want to do. And he kept bribing them with higher prices because there was a short squeeze, so they kept getting the price up, but they couldn't get people enough stock to unwind their position. So the same thing can be done today for Bitcoin. The point is you have to allow it to mature. It is an evolutionary thing. You have to allow the evolution to occur and for it to mature. Today, when Elon Musk says it's not green, the market drops it. Tomorrow, China says I ban it, the market drops it, the hash rate dies. So those things will affect it. It's what is called as a single large event. A single large event will affect that particular currency because it's still too small. Currently, what's happening is the Fed indicated interest rate hikes from April onwards. So the thing got risk capital supposedly left it, right? Now imagine a $30 trillion US equity market losing $3 trillion, which is 10%, versus Bitcoin losing, if it was at say 1.2 trillion or 1.3 trillion when it was at its peak, or 1.5 trillion even, if it loses $300 million, $300 billion, then you're going to lose 20%. So it's going to have a 50% effect on its price.
Exactly.
So that is how the volatility is addressed. If you want to trade it, it's beautiful, right? You will love the volatility. Whatever is your trading thesis, I am not a trader, so I don't want to get into it. But whether you're charting, whether you're looking at price action, volume action, whether you're looking at news cycles, whatever it is, you can have your own thesis and you can trade it. It's beautiful for traders. For investors, if you zoom out and you go from daily to weekly to monthly to quarterly to annual, you'll realize the direction is clear. There is no volatility. And so that's, you choose where you are and you decide, and you can live with the volatility then.
Exactly. And there's one more thing that I wanted to add here. So I did some analysis wherein I was comparing the free float of Bitcoin on exchanges and percentage of it that is traded on an average in last 24 hours compared to the free float of, let's say, an HDFC bank and the 24 hours average trade. So for HDFC, it wasn't even 2 to 3 bips. Like it was nothing.
Correct.
Compared to Bitcoin, which was 25%, because exchanges mein Bitcoin hi nahi hai. So when 25% of the whole free float is being exchanging hands, you really can't expect daily. You really can't expect it to just go 5 to 10% upar niche.
Exactly. And if you look at a micro cap, if you take a micro cap, if you take a Alok Industries in India, or if you take a similar stock in the US, you will get the similar percentage. You'll get that 10, 15, 20% of that free float is traded on a daily basis, and hence it hits upper circuit, lower circuit all the time, when it's not upper circuit, lower circuit.
So maybe that's the reason I feel a lot of Indian investors that I talk to, they are too accustomed to the concept of upper and lower circuits. They simply can't take in कि एक दिन में एक asset 10, 20, 30% भी हो सकता है. Whereas in US, it's a common, like it's very common since they don't have circuits. So maybe that's more of a psychological barrier that Indian investors go through. So another FAQ that I had was BTC mining requires huge energy. If it were a country, it would be taking X amount of energy and would be 6th largest country in terms of energy consumption. So this is the FUD, right? So how do you view it?
Yeah, so that's interesting. That's very important, okay? Because we're in a generation where, and I have a 6-year-old, so I know how I feel about leaving things for her, right? So obviously environment and sustainability and ESG, everything is super critical. But the difference is we're missing out on one core principle of human existence of the last 2000 years. It is energy for money. Think about it, right? If you were a farm laborer 1000 years back, what did you do? You worked 8 hours a day and you got something in return, whether it was whatever, depending on whichever part of the world you were. Either you got a barter, so you got something at the end of the harvest, say 3 months later, or you got something at the end of the day or week. So you basically gave your energy and you earned something which you wanted, which is fuel for your body. As the combustion engine came, you realize that, boss, I have a much more efficient way of doing this. Horses ka energy nahi burn karunga main carbon fuel ka energy burn karunga, right? So you took oil from the ground and you burnt it to essentially create work or create progress or make movement or whatever it was, right? To fuel an engine. So you went from human energy to carbon energy. So ultimately, energy for value or energy for progress is the most fundamental aspect of human society and evolution. You cannot delink those two. Can you imagine if I told you, ki boss, even if you look at, I'm going to take a step back, even if you look at what the future extreme example of the Matrix movies was, right? They were actually harvesting the energy of those humans to run what was the Matrix, right? So ultimately, आपको energy ही transform करना है. What we call as engineers who understand very well, I'm not an engineer, but I understand this, is potential energy has to be converted into kinetic energy for work to happen. And ultimately, that's what we're doing in Bitcoin also. If you are agreeing that there is a value to it, you are agreeing to spend energy in one form and take back value in another form, which is Bitcoin in a wallet. Whether that it's exactly, and I am a coal miner by profession. So nobody understands this as inherently as I do, because when I spend money to mine coal, which is actually energy, right? It's literally kilocalories per ton I'm selling. So when you do that, you continuously evaluate what is the price of this energy today, how much money am I spending to get this out, and therefore is it profitable to make this trade or not. Is to keep mining. And that's exactly what every Bitcoiner is doing. The only time it doesn't make sense is when the price of the energy is down. So if coal is down, I may stop my mine, or if Bitcoin price is down, I may stop mining my Bitcoin. The same also applies to gold.
Exactly.
If you count the amount of, because here it's a very simple power trade, you count, अरे ये तो इतना megawatt power ले रहा है, इतना gigawatt power ले रहा है, इतना kilojoules energy burn कर रहा है. But if you count the energy utilized for any mining industry, you will have to add the trucks, the people, the power, the processing, all of that, and you will realize it's equally energy intensive. It's just that it's not one straight line electricity in, Bitcoin out, It's 10 resources in, gold out, coal out, oil out, natural gas out. Therefore, you don't get that one equation in kilojoules or megawatts or gigawatts. You get it in dollars per ton.
Yes,
So
exactly.
ultimately, that is very intrinsic to me because of my profession. But most people get swayed by the way it is put by an influencer like Elon, who says it's high energy. It's not high energy. Every Tesla burns power, and that power is coming from either coal or natural gas. In most cases, I can assure all your listeners that it's coming from one of the non-green sources of energy, the power that is fueling his car every day.
So honestly, I couldn't agree more with you because even though I have been a Bitcoiner for quite some while, this as a concept was really new to me when I was listening to conversation between Dr. Safedin and Jordan Peterson, and even Michael Saylor puts it very beautifully. He's like, Bitcoin is just transferring kinetic energy to monetary energy, and money
Correct.
or monetary asset is just a way for you to transfer that energy either to the future, because monetary assets are saleable across time. And that was mind fucking moment for me. मुझे लगा उस दिन मुझे दुनिया का सारा ज्ञान प्राप्त हो गया, because it was genuinely a very profound concept. And another added thing that I learned in Jordan Peterson's conversation was that that is when Safedin said that Bitcoin is the only thing in the world which allows you to monetize energy even in the farthest part of the corners of the world. How? Because let's say if you are able to monetize a journey energy, right? You simply can't transfer that electricity, because transferring में there is a lot of AT&C costs and बहुत ज़्यादा loss होगा. The
and you
energy
have
that
infrastructure. You need the
infrastructure. Exactly. So यहाँ पे you can't monetize it. The only way you can monetize that energy is through Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is actually solving that problem and allowing people out there to monetize their own energy. And that whole concept, I don't know how did I get to know, and I just hope people understand it because it's so fundamental, and I couldn't agree more with you, sir. So yeah, one last FAQ that we had was, how is Bitcoin an inflation hedge? And the reason they say this is because पिछले 6 महीने में तो इन्फ्लेशन काफी ऊपर गया है, लेकिन पिछले 6 महीने में बिटकॉइन ऑल टाइम हाई से 50% गिर गया है. Shouldn't it be an inflation hedge? And then they compare it to gold. पिछले 6 महीने में तो gold has been up 1% or at least stable compared to all these growth stocks and all inflation hedge Bitcoin जो तो नीचे गिर गया है. And then they also, like all the naysayers also say that it has extremely high correlation to growth stocks. So I want you to answer this.
Yeah. So to understand any such concept of inflation hedge, 6 months or even 6 years is a short period of time. You have to actually give it 50 years. Only then, because the reason why you're so confident about gold is because you've looked at it for 100 years, and that inflation, anti-inflation concept or the negative correlation has held for 100 years, right? Only when Bitcoin goes to 50 years old can we actually have this meaningful conversation or comparison or data. But let's for a moment assume that what we have is only 12 years. So let's live with that 12 years of data. The point is, Bitcoin is so small, right? For most of its existence, it's been less than $100 billion market cap for most of its existence, because till it cracked this 20-30,000 mark and it went into 18 billion coins, 17 million coins kind of range, it was actually too small to matter. So therefore you had 0.1, 0.2 trillion market cap, and therefore it cannot be an inflation hedge, right? Today, the anti-inflationary nature of Bitcoin is a theoretical hypothesis, which many of us are betting on, for lack of a better word. Versus when it's gold, somebody has a 100-year proven history. Whether we have proven right or wrong, only time will tell. And it has several variables which we can't control. It could include everything from regulation to how countries view their fiat, to how fast countries use Bitcoin, to what happens to the energy crisis in the world. It could be so many things that could influence this. But to me, the moment you have a $10 trillion Bitcoin, and I'm saying $10 trillion Bitcoin, so I'm looking at 10x from today's price, you can say, broadly speaking, 20 million Bitcoin into $50,000 is 1 trillion.
So 500,000.
So
500,000.
So I'm looking at a $500,000
coin.
exactly, $500,000 per Bitcoin value. So I'm saying when it's a $10 trillion market cap, that is when you will realize that, boss, this is real money, this is sound money. I can't budge this because enough people in the world hold it. There is enough transactions happening on it, whether it's whether it's in the fiat world or whether it's Bitcoin to Bitcoin or whether it's Bitcoin to other. I think if nothing more, Bitcoin becomes the US dollar of cryptocurrencies, if nothing more, right? So it's your base cryptocurrency denomination, like the US dollar is for the world of fiat today.
And that's still way far ahead. Happens. Yeah.
And that's still a time ahead, because that will take it to be $5 to $10 trillion range for it to be considered that, because everybody else will be $500 billion to 1 trillion and they will be at 5 trillion. Just to give you a sense, US economy is today $15 trillion. Chinese is, I think, $21 trillion GDP. So that's the kind of scale you're looking at, right? And then India is what, number 5 or number 6, and we are at $3 trillion. So that's how far 1 and 2 will be. So that's how far I see a Bitcoin or an Ethereum is from everybody else, and therefore they will become the global denomination of the crypto world.
So I think people often get confused when they're just talking about. So ARC recently came up with their in their last I wouldn't say con call, in the last webinar that they hosted. Usme they said they're looking at a 500,000 coin. Okay? And people went crazy ki 500,000 coin kaise ho sakta hai? But only to realize that even if it reaches 500,000 coin, it still will have a lower market cap than, let's say, gold, because gold is still
11, of course, gold may go to 15 trillion, right? By then.
Hopefully for gold.
I'm saying May.
And that still
it goes up 50%, while gold has gone up 50%, while Bitcoin has gone up 10x.
And that is still a very small percentage of the total global wealth, that the total addressable market out there. So
yeah, which is 100 trillion, 200 trillion market.
Easily.
Exactly.
Fine. So last FAQ was, and it was more of a thing that I wanted to ask. Bitcoin space is filled with meme culture. Okay? So you have president of El Salvador changing his DP to a MACD hat, and then as soon as Bitcoin starts pumping, we have all the laser eyes coming in. Then we have Max Kaiser. He literally is messing up with the whole US fiat currency. A lot is going on in the whole Bitcoin space. How do you view it? Is it because, what I personally feel is still majority of people in the Bitcoin are still, I won't say immature, but they still don't understand the nuances of, let's say, what Bitcoin actually is from economic standpoint and even from a technical standpoint. But I think ऐसे बोल के मैं कुछ गलत ही बोल रहा हूँ, because even Pomp and Sailor, all of these guys also playfully get engaged in this whole thing, right? So how do you view it, this whole space?
Okay, so it's essential to understand where we are as a society today, right? You can do a Jay Leno show or a Kapil Sharma show, right? They're both very similar. Jay Leno or a Kapil Sharma show every day of the week, and people will log in to watch it. Or you have to do something like news, which is serious, but because it's different every day, you have to watch it, correct? Can you imagine your teacher coming to class and teaching you the same chapter every day for the rest of your life? बोले पागल हो गया सर, प्रणव क्या हो गया आपको, आप सेम ज्ञान आके रोज 30 मिनट सेम ज्ञान दे रहे हो, नहीं हो पाएगा बॉस. But if I come and give you the same ज्ञान as a meme every single day, you will come listen to me. चलो यार सुन लेते हैं क्या बोल रहा है, आज का मीम क्या है. So the way to basically, the concept of something like social media, along with our goldfish size attention spans, combined with our lack of width, right? Something like Bitcoin, you cannot explain it every day. If I am going to go and give theory on Bitcoin every day for the next 1 year, I'll have 0 followers at the end of next year.
Mm.
Because you can't give theory every day. So you have to involve it into what is called as popular culture. What is popular culture is what is basically memes. So you see shows that have Bitcoin, you have movies that have Bitcoin, you have Twitter Bitcoin. So even Naib Bukulele knows that every day he cannot say, I bought 100 Bitcoin today, because he did not bought 100 Bitcoin today, right? So that can be a news flash once a month. What about the other 29 days? If he doesn't pump the concept, it'll die. So everybody who believes in as themselves as somebody who's the ambassador for Bitcoin or for any project, right, has to keep doing that. And the advantage is the society or the target audience of the Bitcoin is not my 70-year-old dad, mom, or my 85-year-old corporate executive, right? So who's like serious all the time and who thinks that I have to act serious all the time. It doesn't require that. I could be a fun-loving 25-year-old, 35-year-old, 40-year-old, and I could hold Bitcoin and own it and enjoy it. And I can enjoy the jokes around it. So I feel meme culture is super important in terms of the daily conversations, to bring daily conversations to Bitcoin and to bring Bitcoin into people's daily conversations, right? Can you imagine forwarding into your family group some meme about Bitcoin compared to sending one paragraph of Steph's book every day? They'll ban you from the group, yeah.
Yep.
But if you send a Bitcoin meme yourself, they're like, "Arey, Kashish is making jokes about Bitcoin himself, जबकि सबसे बड़ा Bitcoiner हमारे group में यही है." But somebody someday will tap you and say, "But what's happening here? Price fell down." So you get a moment to explain about the volatility, or you get a moment to explain why it happened, and that brings real conversation, right? That triggers real conversation, and that's the logic of anybody who engages in this while also being a serious proponent of it.
I totally get your point now. So let's get this section done with, and now we'll talk about the antithesis of Bitcoin, right? Because I've always been told that investment mein, you should know your opponent's arguments, your antithesis way better than your thesis, because you just don't want to be wrong, right? So what is the antithesis here? Honestly, for me, the only antithesis I know of is that people stop believing in Bitcoin being a monetary asset from economic sense, because I feel that gold also held a monetary premium over its normal utility in, let's say, jewelry or industrial use, was because they all of them agreed to the fact that, yeah, we will use this as money, therefore it started commanding, and nothing else. There is no other reason why gold started commanding monetary premium, according to me. And same is fiat. Matlab, fiat mein obviously there's somebody telling you, yeah, this piece of paper is worth something. But if there was no central power out there, it is people who decide. The only antithesis I know of is people in future may decide कि बिटकॉइन हम अपनी मॉनेटरी लेयर की तरह यूज नहीं करेंगे and we'll start using something else. That's the only antithesis I know of. What's the antithesis according to you for Bitcoin, and how do you view it?
So to me, the real antithesis or the real death bell for something like Bitcoin would be the tapering of our digital lives. Because that's, so if for some reason, right, which today we've gone past the inflection point, and I'll come to that. But if you ask me 2 years back, it was a real possibility, because people were coming off Facebook, people were coming off Twitter, right? People were saying, nahi, social media pe apni life ko nahi dalna. I don't want to put everything I do on Instagram. You don't want to share your breakfast, lunch, dinner. You don't want to share your friends' tables where you're out partying. And you realize as you mature that your posts per week will reduce. So if you were to plot age versus posts per week, right? The younger you are, the higher you're posting. This curve would come like this.
Yep.
So it doesn't matter. So that was my problem. And I felt that was the biggest risk to Bitcoin. Where that has changed is we've crossed that hurdle with the entire metaverse, decentralized Web3 concept. And if that actually happens, we're good. If that fails in its entirety, then we have a problem, because that is the place where the shared value, right? What you're saying is shared value. The shared value perception of Bitcoin will drop, and then it's not worth $10 trillion. Then it's worth, like I said, a football card or a Pokemon card. It's worth $100,
Hmm. Got it.
because
So,
then it's having limited use.
totally, totally. Just being looked at as a collectible, the way it was in
Yeah,
2010, the way it started.
yeah, correct. Because it's not something I can use, right? It has no utilitarian value. And the moment my utilitarian value drops is when I have digital life drop out.
Hmm.
If digital presence keeps on increasing and digital transactions keep on increasing, there is no risk. So if
Yep.
someone tells you CBDC is a risk, it's not. If someone tells you regulation is a risk, it's not. If someone tells you uh, Ethereum is a risk, it's definitely not. So the real risk and the only risk is our own digital presence being reduced. So if you and I stop spending as much time on digital media or digital work, and then we realize that yes, this is not the way it is, I want to live my life in my real world farming, then it is.
Hmm.
But I don't see that happening, so I'm okay where I am.
I also think that is, matlab, the only way that happens is if our evolution go backwards. Matlab,
That's what I'm saying.
if we were to evolve forward, the only way forward is digital. Uh,
Correct.
just kya bolte, moving on to the tangent wherein you said if you talk about Ethereum, it's not. And I wanted to
Yeah.
discuss that in particular, right? And also wanted to put forth my view wherein when we talk about Bitcoin versus Ethereum, okay? So I think this Bitcoin versus Ethereum is a wrong question to ask. It's more about Bitcoin and Ethereum. The reason I say this is because I personally have long held this view that Bitcoin is a monetary asset. Ethereum is more of a commodity in a digital decentralized world being used for Web3 dApps and etc. etc. Bitcoin is a monetary asset with network effects, with a hard cap, with people believing in it to be a store of value. Whereas this thing, Ethereum being a commodity, which is a programmable form of token, which can be used on Web3 applications or dApps or whatnot. A good comparison here would be a gold and a oil. So a gold was a monetary asset. It held monetary premium, but it's not gold versus oil because oil has a separate use case altogether. Oil is a commodity. Oil is used because we live in a mechanical world. Oil ki zarurat rahegi, but it will never become gold. People will not start using oil for transactions, day-to-day transactions. They'll always be using gold if you were in a gold standard. So this is how I've always viewed this whole scenario. How do you, as a much more senior to me and way more knowledgeable, view this Bitcoin versus Ethereum conundrum?
So I 100% think you're spot on with your gold versus oil. I would say it's also gold versus fiat, right? While gold remained as an investment commodity or an investment asset, or equity remained something which you invested in, or bonds were something which you invested in, you really did not have an opportunity to spend it or apply it, right? You can't do that. So Ethereum is an application protocol which is different from what Bitcoin wants to be. Bitcoin doesn't want to be that, right? It's like you're telling the topper of the class that you will be the football quarterback. Both of those people in a classroom have two different roles and they have two different ambitions, and both will be the best in their own category.
Yeah.
But the moment you bring both to a comparison, it doesn't matter because they don't compete with each other.
Hmm.
The topper of the class goes off on their different way, and the quarterback goes their different way, right? They both have excellent paths to success, and they both have different paths to success,
Hmm.
and they can both coexist very, very happily and have their moment of glory at their point of time, right? When the results come out, the topper has it, the class is going on, the topper has it. But when you're out watching the game, the quarterback is the hero of the day.
Yeah.
So that's what it is, right? If you ask me, that's exactly what Bitcoin is to Ethereum. Ethereum will become, or has become, the backbone of the blockchain technology being applied to real life,
Hmm.
while Bitcoin uses blockchain as its backend technology. But Bitcoin is not blockchain, right?
Hmm.
The blockchain is just how it works.
So why don't you emphasize here, right? Discussing, let's say, blockchain only. Blockchain as a technology, as a tool, is being used to solve certain monetary assets related problem, which was, let's say, double spending. Okay, so blockchain solved that. Awesome. बहुत तगड़े तरीके से. But blockchain being used in other facets of life beside a monetary system, which Ethereum is doing. Let's now discuss about this. Let's discuss about dApps, even NFTs, right? Being digital collectibles or Web3. How do you view it? And keeping Bitcoin conversation aside, just Ethereum and let's say even some other Ethereum competitors, I would say, be it a Solana or a Cardano. So just stage is all yours.
So we have to understand what they're doing, right? So when you come into the non-Bitcoin applied, so Bitcoin is basically what a cryptocurrency is. And other cryptocurrencies we sort of know what Bitcoin Cash or Litecoin or similar. All of them tried to do, even Ethereum when it launched tried to do that. It tried to, before it became the smart contract narrative, if you look at the very old narrative, it used to be something which tried and said, I'm going to be faster than Bitcoin. But Vitalik and all these guys quickly realized that that's not the way to go. And they basically pivoted to this smart contract concept. So let's look at what that is, right? What that is basically saying is a smart contract is anything that's a codable, programmable, pre-decided between two parties transaction. So at the very basic, it's a transaction, right? So what you're doing is today when you buy an airline ticket or you buy something on Amazon or you buy an equity on Robinhood or Zerodha, you're basically entering into a transaction which is being run through a central server run by that company or the counterparty in this case, which is Zerodha or Amazon or whoever. And you rely on them, you trust them. Ki boss, Amazon got my order. I have paid him. My Visa card has been debited. And Visa and Amazon will not cheat me. I will get something in the mail. Correct? Isn't that trust?
Absolutely.
What blockchain does is it makes it trustless.
Okay.
You don't need to trust. There is no Amazon or a Visa that you need to trust he has your best interest in mind. Or if something goes wrong, pick up the phone and complain. It says this is a trustless mechanism. So you don't need to know who the counterparty is, but they will deliver and you will deliver like you have, and it will go through seamlessly. So the blockchain is creating a trustless mechanism which is non-centralized. Therefore, there are 2-3 concepts, right? Which is why I always argue with people that, boss, if something is not centralized, A, it's not a blockchain.
A CBDC.
If it's not a centralized, it's not blockchain. B, if it's not a public ledger, it's not blockchain. Anybody who tries to convince you that these two elements don't pass the test and it's still a blockchain is just showing you a server in a different form. It's old wine in a new bottle. So basically, you have to have decentralization and you have to have public ledger. The public ledger is also something that is misunderstood. People think public ledger means the whole blockchain is available for everybody to see. It's not that. What it does is, if you, let's say, we know this is a particular piece of land that is owned by you, and that's a government record.
Okay.
Right? So you know ki this is in Maharashtra we call it Satbara Khasra. So this is my Satbara. This is my record of this land owned by Kashish in this part of Maharashtra. Now, when you look at that, you go to the government doesn't show you the whole Satbara of everybody in the state, no? They show you your line and say, see, this is the proof you own this. That's exactly what the blockchain does. It just shows you your line. And anybody who's your counterparty also has the authority and the permission to see your line.
Okay.
So if I am trying to buy that land from you, I will get verification from that line that yes, this is there. It doesn't matter that I don't see the rest of the information on the ledger. I only need to see one row, which is whether Kashish owns this or not. And tomorrow when I buy it, that row becomes mine and my name is on that land. We should all be able to verify that yes, that transfer has happened. So you're basically giving a pinhole view of that particular thing. And that's a trustless mechanism, consensus mechanism, which says everybody agrees this line belongs to Kashish. Now everybody agrees this line belongs to Pranav.
Got it.
And everybody's only looked at that line to verify it. They don't care about what else is happening. And that happens for every transaction. And therefore, that trustless mechanism part of it and that application part of it is what this smart contracts or everything else will do for the world. I believe it is going to change. So if you asked me a couple of years back, I would have told you blockchain has no application other than Bitcoin, right? But this is not blockchain at all. Blockchain is being used to store that. The concept is the smart contract. The concept that is unique is that trustless consensus mechanism used to verify something. Today, if you make an airline booking, you can't verify it without going to the website and putting your PNR.
Yep.
What if I told you can go to this site and it will verify your PNR? As long as you have the PNR, it will confirm that it's there.
Okay.
So that is the thing. That is what blockchain does. It sort of widens that network from one person being the trust bearer to everybody being the trust mechanism.
So, Pranav, just help me understand one thing here, right? When we're talking about such smart contract applications and what's the underlying token, underlying blockchain and token being used to do these smart contracts, we have a lot. Ethereum we have, Cardano we have. So just help me understand that space, ki wahan pe what's happening. And one more thing, ki are we yet at the stage wherein we are capable of making a complex set of smart contracts which can easily replace a social media platform like a Facebook and make it purely decentralized, and let's say e-commerce like an Amazon, or are we still way behind? Matlab, abhi we have not reached that point jahan pe we can actually do all these transactions on using smart contracts. Do we still need somebody in the beach mein, Big Daddy, to just ensure that everything is happening?
So it has to be worth it, right? If I told you tomorrow anybody can hack into your Facebook account and make a post on your behalf, you'd be like, no, I'm not going to use Facebook. I'm deleting my account. Or if somebody says that there's nobody on Facebook, right? You're the only one there. You go there and you see that nobody in your contact list is there. You're the only one. You take a look around, you walk around and you come back. It's like going to the college and you realize you're the only student in college, right? So you will say, boss, yahan pe admission hi nahi lena, bhad mein jai college. Correct? So that's what happens, right? So therefore, it's not so easy. It's not so binary that it's not a 0 and 1 function. Everything cannot become Web3 or decentralized. Everything does not need to become Web3 or decentralized because the cost per person or per user will become too much for every user. So you will end up restricting the number of users, which in turn makes it more costlier for every user. If you were to pay for your Facebook basis the amount of hours you use Facebook, what would you do?
I'd leave.
You'd reduce the number of hours you use Facebook.
Exactly.
So does that help Facebook? No. Does that help the social network grow? No. The idea is, if I told you it's free, you can spend as much time as you want on it, and you'll meet your friends and family and they like what you do and you'll be able to like what they do. Then you go and spend more time on it. You'll have to watch some ads for it. You're okay.
So the whole concept of, let's say, a Web3 also democratizing social media can't happen because network effects of existing social media handles are way, way too strong for this to happen. Also, blockchain, it's just not worth the cost because we're just too addicted to...
It's not worth it, right? Yeah, it's not worth it. You ultimately are going to have a trade-off where you say that, so why did OTTs win to an extent, right? When you watched a show on Star TV or Z News or whatever, or Z TV, you had to leave everything you're doing, sit in front of a TV at 8 o'clock, tolerate ads for 10 minutes out of 30, and for every 10 minutes out of every 30 minutes you watched, and wait that till 8:30 if you wanted to consume 20 minutes of programming. Today you can watch that same show on Netflix whenever you want for only 20 minutes without an ad, and in fact you can watch it at 1.5x like I do, and even do it in 12 minutes. Correct?
Yep.
So now my 30 minutes has become 12 minutes, but I have seen the same content.
Yep.
That is needed.
Okay.
अभी बोलेगा Netflix में everything is good, but because you are watching 20 minutes of Netflix, even if you watched it in 12, that's your problem. But you watched it in, you consume 20 minutes, so now you have to pay this much dollars, versus Kashish watched 60 minutes, so he has to pay 3x that cost. Then people will start being like, boss, I don't want to watch Netflix.
And blockchain mein, as you're streaming, you'll be charged as per that only, because
it's decentralized, right? You have to bear your own costs, and you have to gain the profit of everybody's cost. So ultimately it's going to pay out. So you can't really put everything into the same framework, economic framework, and expect it to work at a mass scale.
Got it. So now moving on to the more recent events that happened in the whole crypto and Bitcoin space, right? The primary one that I wanted to discuss was obviously El Salvador accepting it as illegal tender, and now Arizona and Texas only recently announcing कि boss हम भी इसको legal tender रखेंगे. So like what's your view? पहले तो can you explain यहाँ हुआ क्या, especially in the Arizona and Texas वाला, because I haven't read fully, and how do you view this happening? Is it start of a super cycle for Bitcoin, the way one of the Twitter handles, Dan Held, said in his Substack report?
So what happens is El Salvador is truly the use case or the test case of this entire thesis that Bitcoin can become money. I think El Salvador was a little early, but it solved their biggest problem of international monetary transfers, which was remittances from El Salvadorians outside El Salvador sending money back home, which I think was about $500 million a year. And they used to depend on a Western Union money transfer or similar service, which was charging them too much money and too much transaction cost. Now with Bitcoin, a lot of that is gone.
Yep.
But the transactions are still happening on a dollar denominated basis with a live Bitcoin price. So that's a good middle ground, like we say, between the 0 and the 1, where they can live and survive and thrive. Now what happens is, when it comes to Arizona and Texas, the state senators over there, one each, have proposed a bill to make it legal tender in their state. The reason is it's more politics than economics. The logic is that basically every senator needs to have a campaign, and the campaign needs to have backers. Today, crypto companies are flush with money and looking for, it's like, people are looking for where can I spend. Crypto.com bought a sponsorship for the San Francisco Stadium. They bought a Formula One team. So they're literally looking out there, right? I'll cut a check. Please tell me where I can slap my name on it. Similarly, these are guys who said, okay, fine, boss, Texas has a lot of oil and gas resources. It's a great mining hub for Bitcoin. So why don't you put this and we will back you, right? And it gives you good PR. It gives us good PR. Everybody starts to know this one senatorial candidate or one senator from Texas who would never have got this visibility on world stage.
So it's game theory playing. So it's game theory playing. So
yeah, it is game theory. It is politics. So that's there. The advantage is it triggers thought into the mainstream, which otherwise would not have. Like, people would have ignored it. Some people, let's say even one person gets to know about Bitcoin because he read about it in the newspaper that Arizona might legalize Bitcoin. It's a win for us. Right? It's one more than we had yesterday.
Yes.
So if you have to go to 8 billion people and they know what US dollar is, say 5 billion out of 8 billion know what US dollar is, or 7 billion out of 8 billion know what US dollar is, then Bitcoin, we are at probably 500 million people. So we need to get there, right?
Got it.
So at least it helps us build that narrative. That's why people are saying, if you'll talk about Bitcoin, I'll back you.
Mm.
And
So
they
it's,
have an interest in that because they're invested in that space.
and honestly, I think that as we get this free PR as Bitcoiners, and people see Bitcoin as an asset maturing over time, they'll also start to appreciate it as an asset. And the way you started doing it, the way I started doing it, and eventually, once everybody starts agreeing, there's no other way Bitcoin can, like, there's no other direction Bitcoin going but up. So
Exactly. And because there's a cap on it, on how many we can mine and how many can be created, there ultimately someone has to sell for someone to buy, right?
exactly.
So that helps.
So it's been a long conversation. Thank you so much, Pranav. Before I let you go, just one last thing. You being a CFO of your own company, right? What plans do you have adding Bitcoin to your company's balance sheet?
So I work for SR. We're fairly conservative, and we definitely would not want to have. So it's too volatile to put your corporate treasury in, because every corporate treasury is a fiduciary responsibility, right?
Yep.
I have, of course, I have my family to answer for my personal assets, but beyond that, nobody else, right? But my family trusts that I have my family's best interest in mind.
Mm.
But that cannot work for the company because you are a fiduciary officer of the company, and the ownership of the company is not always with one person or one family, right? So you
Got it.
can't really put a corporate treasury into that. I could, if I were to start, if I were given the freedom to start, I would first use it as an investment mechanism. So suppose we're parking our money in bonds, our treasury in bonds, I may
Okay.
say, let us try 2%, 1% into Bitcoin just to get a sense of how it goes. What is the service available? What is the, because there is a huge issue with custody for corporate Bitcoin. So
Mm. Yeah.
insurance for corporate Bitcoin. So I need some of those macro services to be established before I can consider,
Mm.
because the argument is not why not Bitcoin. I am sold on why not Bitcoin. I can convince anybody on that, right? My problem is how to
Especially
do
for
it
corporate perspective, not as a
from
personal
a corporate
individual.
perspective. Correct. So
Mm.
today, when I put money in a bank and I say it's in a bond,
Mm.
if I want the money 3 hours later also, the bank will give me that money because they know the bond he has sold is going to come and hit the bank 2 days later.
Yeah.
So there are very, very nuanced services or facilities that we get when we use our corporate funds for particular treasury products, which we need when it comes to Bitcoin, which is not there today. At
As of
least if
today.
it's not there at scale, or
Mm.
it's not there at the trust level that I need, and therefore there is a problem. It's not regulated, it's not insured, it's
Got it.
not fully transparent. So we can't really put corporate money, which is not my money, right?
Mm.
It's the company's money. So therefore there's a problem. I can't say कि Pranav has the thing in his wallet and he knows the recovery phrase. या मैंने
Totally.
12 वर्ड्स में से 4 वर्ड कशिश को दे दिए, 4 प्रणव को दे दिए, 4 किसी और को दे दिए, अब तीनों जन मिलेंगे तो ये होगा, और फिर ये बिटकॉइन को हम बेचेंगे और T+2 में हमको पैसा मिलेगा, तो फिर हम कंपनी का काम आगे बढ़ाएंगे. डजंट वर्क लाइक दैट.
I totally got it. So thank you so much, Pranav, for taking out time. Before I let you go, in case what audience अभी तक देख रही है, thank you for staying tuned with us. Hope this conversation was knowledgeable and exciting. Pranav, now you have the stage to let people know what you're doing with your own venture, wherein you're teaching people about crypto, and where can they learn more about you? How can they reach out to you in case they wish to dwell deeper for crypto as a possible asset class in their investment portfolio?
Sure. I'll request you to put my LinkedIn profile and my Twitter handle on this post if you can.
Mm.
But otherwise, I typically blog on Bitcoin or crypto space on LinkedIn. I'm currently doing a 100-day series called Crypto Demystified. which is one post a day beginning 1st of Jan 2020. I started on 1st Jan 2022. And a lot of my regulars are on a Telegram group that is called the Fin All Rounder Telegram group. And that's also my handle on Twitter and Facebook. So I post on that handle, but on LinkedIn, I post on my own page, which is my Pranav Agarwal profile page. So the logic is that I want to take Bitcoin or I want to take crypto education to the masses. I am not telling anybody that you put money in or don't put money in, how much in or not. All I'm saying is we are at a stage where you cannot ignore knowing about this thing.
Yeah.
Just learn about it. It doesn't matter. Don't put any money. Don't even put 5 rupees. I'm saying 0 rupees or $0. Just learn about it. It's too late to say I don't know what Bitcoin is, or I don't know what cryptocurrency is, or I don't know what NFTs are. You have to learn what this is. If you have to be an economic participant in the next 20 years, and if you're anywhere sub 50, then you're already late if you don't know about it. If you're like, my mom asks me, Pranav, ye Bitcoin kya cheez hai, right? That tells you, and she's 60 plus. So that tells you how important it is to know about it, and you can't ignore it. It's too big to ignore today, and it's too late to ignore it. So my idea is just to educate and inform and teach people about it.
Absolutely. I wanted to add on to what Pranav sir said here. Ki even in my own Bitcoin wala video, the last thing where we talked about whether you should buy Bitcoin, I clearly mentioned ki boss, don't buy Bitcoin. Don't at all. Just use this video as sort of a Kickstarter for you to try learning more about it. And honestly, as in when you learn more about such technologies, as in when your convictions build, you don't need anybody to tell you to buy Bitcoin. You yourself are incentivized to be part of this community by owning some of it, and that comes very naturally. Nobody forced me to buy Bitcoin. Neither Pranav sir did, not did anybody. As I learned more about it, I couldn't help but buy it because it was just too exciting, too knowledgeable, too profound to miss. With that being said, thank you so much, audience, for tuning in. Thank you so much, Pranav sir, for taking out time. Much appreciated.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure, and all the best. Keep doing what you're doing. I love 10-minute finance. I think I've shared that link with a lot of my nephews and nieces, because you look at the basics and the fundamentals, and I love that part about your channel.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir.